Okay, today we're talking about Pittsburgh, and there's a whole lot of things that really make Pittsburgh, well, Pittsburgh, and we can talk about the sports teams with the Penguins and the Steelers and the Pirates and even the Pittsburgh Passion. We can talk about the Strip District, the Incline. I don't know how many of you know this, but the first Ferris wheel is actually from Pittsburgh. Maybe the restaurants like Permani's and the old Civic Arena is now gone because of console, but the view is one of the things that really helps a lot of people, or kind of makes Pittsburgh stand out to other places. But really, when we think about Pittsburgh, when we think about all of these cool things that we have now, how do we get to this point? Well, it is an interesting process here because it starts off with Pittsburgh being quite a bit of farmland. We talked about during the French and Indian War, also known as the 7 Years' War, that Fort Pitt / Fort Duquesne was a very pivotal point, kind of in the wilderness, but it has this location at the Three Rivers, which was very ideal. It is kind of the boundary part that we talked about with that. But Pittsburgh does start off, and it starts industrializing here. And when we look at this map, which is from 1902, it's really a piece of artwork, but from 1902, you can see that Pittsburgh really is starting to industrialize quite a bit. Some key features, we can see all these bridges, which is something that really does define Pittsburgh quite a bit. But we don't see the big skyscrapers here, and that's something that will change, as you can tell now when you look at the opposite view. And it is an interesting thing to think about how Pittsburgh really has changed a lot over the years. But the big question is, how do we get there? Well, the big thing that it really comes down to is industrialization. It's the fact that industry starts taking over. So let's look at some industrial leaders and even some other ones as well beyond that. We can start off here with some of the ones we already have spoken about in class, Andrew Carnegie and Henry Clay Frick, to some other ones like H.J. Heinz and George Westinghouse. Now these men were some really big business leaders. There are other Pittsburghers who have had great contributions beyond just large billion-dollar industries. Fred Rogers, I don't know how many of you have heard of Mr. Rogers' Neighborhood, very, very influential man. Jonas Salk, another very, very influential man. Doctor, inventor, something that's kind of important here. Rachel Carson, we'll speak about her as we get through our little lesson. And then Art Rooney Sr., another very well-known man. Now, let's go on to a little bit of a game here. The first person, who was it who was a very vocal activist who let people know about the dangers of using pesticides without regulation? Well, that person is Rachel Carson. She wrote a book about this, very famous, and it really helped us in America to kind of keep away from using some of these pesticides because we figured out, oh my gosh, this is causing major problems in children and we don't want that to happen. So Rachel Carson, a very famous Pittsburgher who did help out in that sense. The founder of the Pittsburgh Steelers in 1933 is, as you probably would have guessed, Art Rooney Sr., a very famous man. The Rooney family still has control of the Steelers right now, even though they've given up some of their ownership, still in primary ownership there. 3. I'm responsible for creating the first vaccine for the polio virus. That person is Jonas Salk. Polio is a terrible virus, afflicted many people, really children. It was debilitating. It led to weakness and kids who weren't able to really hold themselves up on their own. His vaccine makes it so that children don't really get it anymore. It's an unbelievably positive thing. Something that we can't really appreciate as well just because we don't understand. It's like smallpox, and we say, oh yeah, smallpox was eradicated from the planet, nobody gets it anymore. Well, when you think about how many people smallpox and polio, in this case, really impacted, oh, it's terrible to think about, but it's so positive to think that it is gone now because of somebody like Jonas Salk. 4. I am famous for hosting a children's television program where I already gave this one away, and that is Fred Rogers, Mr. Fred Rogers, that is. 5. My greatest contribution is with the production of a new type of electricity that rivaled that of Thomas Edison. That is George Westinghouse. Westinghouse and Edison had a little bit of a battle with their different styles of electricity. Edison used the DC direct current, and Westinghouse used the AC alternating current. Think about it, AC, DC, like the band, that's where they get the letters from. But the whole point is this. He came up with something that was a more efficient, more effective way of using electricity that was safer. That's an overall positive gain. Westinghouse is still a major company in Pittsburgh, really because of George Westinghouse and the fact that he had so many patents passed. He was a tremendous inventor, producing things that not only were nice and creative, but kind of insignificant and not really very useful. These were things that were tremendously useful, very important for the railroad system with air brakes, the electricity that we already mentioned. A lot of really good things from Mr. George Westinghouse here. Number 6. After being stabbed in the upper back and shot through the neck on an assassination attempt, I returned to work a week later. That person is Henry Clay Frick. At the time when he was running Carnegie Steel, he was very, very disliked because he was pretty rough on his workers. One tried to kill him, and he survives and comes back to work a week later. Says something about how strongly he believed in hard work. 7. According to legend, I was able to purchase my company with $2,500 that I won while gambling on racehorses. That person is Mr. Aubrey Sr. That's the story and the legend as it goes. He won money gambling on racehorses. He uses it to purchase the Pittsburgh Steelers, which were a terrible football team. And in reality, at this point in time, football wasn't really that big of a sport either. And, well, as you can tell now, the Pittsburgh Steelers are doing pretty well. If you want to push pause and look up the value of the Pittsburgh Steelers, you'll see it's pretty high. So I'd say that $2,500 investment, I think it might have been actually $3,000 that he invested into it, but regardless, it ended up paying out quite a bit. Number 8. I was rumored to have been both an elite sharpshooter in Vietnam with over 100 kills and a Navy SEAL, but was neither. In reality, I was ordained as a Presbyterian minister. This was really funny because I actually thought this was true until I started doing a little bit more research, and this person is Mr. Rogers. People said that he had tattoos up and down his arms, and that's why he'd wear the cardigan every day, and, well, that doesn't really hold any water. That actually is false. If you look it up, you'll find that he was neither of those military positions, but he was ordained as a Presbyterian minister. Number 9, the new technology that I created was used by others to create a new invention that was used for administering capital punishment. That is the electric chair, which if you put 2 and 2 together, you'll figure out was George Westinghouse. Something that he really regretted and he wishes would have never happened. It's kind of an interesting thing to think about. How many inventions do you think are out there that were really, created from somebody else's invention for something positive? I mean, I feel like that would be a really terrible thing to think that what you created, you designed it to be positive, then it turns out it ends up being way more negative than it was positive. Fortunately for George Westinghouse, though, he can fall back on the fact that it's not that he told anybody to kill somebody else, it's just that they used it for that purpose. Plus, Westinghouse had so many other positive things that he definitely left a very positive imprint on the world. Number 10, I love this quote. To do a common thing uncommonly well brings success. This quote is really the whole basis of the H.J. Heinz Company. H.J. Heinz says this, and I love this because I think that when you think about this in anything in life, to do a common thing uncommonly well brings success. No matter what the job is, if you do it to the best of your ability and you work hard at it, you're going to find positive returns for it. Number 11, the reward for work well done is the opportunity to do more. Good attitude here, too. Saying, hey, you did really well, good, do more now. Have a more positive influence, and that's what this person did, which is Jonas Salk. Very, very positive person here. The whole point is you can't sit and be proud of yourself for what you did. Say good job and then move on and do more and do better and, keep improving. That's really what it's all about. 12. Every act you have ever performed since the day you were born was performed because you wanted something. It's interesting. Sounds a little bit harsh. This is Andrew Carnegie, but I do kind of find it to be true. When you think about it, why do you react in certain ways? There's always going to be a justification for how you want something. I challenge you, think about it to yourself now, and then see if you can break that mold and try to not do that. Number 13. The average person puts only 25% of his energy and ability into his work. The world takes his hat off to those who put in more than 50% of their capacity and stands on its head for those few and far between souls who devote 100%. Another interesting perspective. Again, think to yourself, did you put in 100% whenever it comes to doing your work for school and doing your sports-related activities, or do you just kind of put in what you need to get by? Interesting perspective, because I agree with them completely. The world does stand on its head for those who put in 100%. This is also Andrew Carnegie. 14. The human race is challenged more than ever before to demonstrate its mastery, not over nature, but of ourselves. This is Rachel Carson. It's the point that, we always think we have to overcome nature, overcome the world. Maybe we need to overcome our own desires here a little bit and tell ourselves, no, we don't need to do this. Interesting perspective. In 15, if something's hard to do, then it's not worth doing. I want you to think about these Pittsburghers and think about who this fits best with. Because the answer is, well, it doesn't fit with anybody. That's a Homer Simpson's line. I mean, you don't become successful with this type of an attitude. If something's hard to do, then it's not worth doing. Nah, if something's hard to do and it's worthwhile, hey, stick it out, do the best you can, try to accomplish it. It's not to say do hard work just for hard work's sake, but do good things, do work that means something that's beneficial, and then if it's hard, keep with it. It'll end up working out well in the end. It's interesting to consider these Pittsburghers and all the positive things they did just out of our city, because as you can tell, we definitely have had a whole lot of positive come from the great city of Pittsburgh.